There are 8 common mistakes when checking your own blood pressure, and I'm not going to waste your time. I'm just going to jump into the most important one first. But by the end of the video, I'll let you know what I think the best blood pressure machine is. So let's dive right into it. The first mistake is not checking your blood pressure at all, just assuming everything is normal. Unfortunately, blood pressure is known as the silent killer. And the reason why is because there really are no symptoms of high blood pressure until the blood pressure gets so severe that you actually get symptoms. So many people think that they can tell a lot about their body and how it feels, but ultimately your blood pressure is not one of them. Unfortunately, I had a brother-in-law who ended up having a stroke. He didn't know he had high blood pressure until he had the stroke. That was the first time he ever got his blood pressure checked. Was in the hospital. That's not the time to do it. So the first thing that you want to do is get a very high quality, reliable blood pressure machine, and to learn how to take your blood pressure properly so that you can find out if you're at risk of things before they happen. To let you know what ended up happening was he had a stroke. He ended up in a wheelchair for a couple years, then ended up in a nursing home and eventually died. So there's a little bit of passion about trying to get people healthy because this should have been avoided. The second mistake is body position. If you take your blood pressure standing up or you take it lying down, it's going to skew the numbers a bit and won't give you accurate numbers. The traditional way of checking blood pressure is in a resting position with your feet on the ground, seated with a back support. This is very important because even just crossing your legs can increase your numbers by 7 millimeters of mercury. The third mistake is arm position. So your upper arm, this part of your arm right here, needs to be at the level of the top of your heart. So your heart is a pretty big muscle and it fits in your chest like this. Now some people have bigger hearts than others, but basically the top of the heart right here is where you want the upper arm. Now your heart is about 2/3 more to the left, but this position right here is where you want your upper arm to be. You see there? So if your arm is dangling and you check the blood pressure will read artificially high by about 7 points. Now the fourth mistake is a very common mistake that people do at home, and actually I'm going to say that 90% of all doctors' offices make this same mistake. Now, before I tell you this mistake, just to let you know, this is something that I take myself for supporting normal blood pressure. It's from Nature's Pure Blend. It's called Nature's Beats. And I really like these things. I take 2 capsules, and just to let you know why I use beets as a dietary supplement is because sometimes I don't make beets or put them in my smoothies. That's normally how I like to consume beets. But beets have nitrates in them, and these nitrates convert to nitric oxide. And the nitric oxide allows your blood vessels to really relax and expand for every heartbeat and can really make a difference in blood pressure. So I'll put a link down below in the description. They sponsor the video, which I contacted them because I like the product genuinely, but I'll put a link down below. No pressure, you don't have to buy them if you don't want, but if you have high blood pressure, you want to start using supplements that help your blood pressure as well as changing your diet, which I'll talk about in another video. So let's do number 4, not resting. The definition of hypertension is high blood pressure at rest. Your blood pressure should not be taken after you've run up a flight of stairs, carried groceries, and put them away in your kitchen, then you immediately check your blood pressure. That's not when you want to check your blood pressure. By definition, you want to know what your blood pressure is at rest. So what this means is the best time of the day to take blood pressure is either morning or night. Always make sure that you have a bowel movement, that you haven't consumed any nicotine or caffeine or anything. You want to be fully rested when you check your blood pressure. This is a major problem when it comes to having a doctor check your blood pressure, because a lot of times you'll just be rushed into the office. They'll check, the nurse will slap the blood pressure on your arm. Your arm is dangling, by the way. Your feet are not supported. There's no back support. And then they ask you about a depression screening, or they say, how's the prostate cancer going, and they stress you out. And then they check your blood pressure as they're talking. There's a lot of mistakes that occur, and thus this is considered white coat syndrome, because not only these mistakes in not checking the real resting blood pressure, but so many mistakes, and then the nervousness of having a doctor visit doesn't mean that you're resting. So the best, most accurate way to check blood pressure is during the resting time. And so make sure that you're actually rested. For some people, they need to take a lot of deep breaths to kind of relax before you check your blood pressure. The majority of people that check blood pressure correctly are in cardiology offices, because the cardiologist really wants to know an accurate reading. And so very often they'll allow you to rest. They'll have a chair with an arm support that comes up or down to support proper testing. The fifth mistake is not checking your blood pressure on the correct arm. Should you do it on the left? Should you do it on the right? Well, here's some interesting news. It's actually controversial of which arm is the best arm, and we're going to dive into it right now, because I think that we're getting the wool pulled over our eyes a little bit on this. So hear me out. Traditionally, we were taught in school to check it on the left arm. The reason why is because when your heart has an artery that comes out the top and starts dividing onto the left side and the right side, and then it starts having more divisions, there's actually more divisions of the blood vessel on the right side than the left. So if you're checking blood pressure, you want to know, what is the blood pressure and how does it affect the heart? Well, the closer to your heart you can check the blood pressure, the more accurate it would be. So on the left arm, the brachial artery right here between your bicep and your tricep on the inside part of your arm has less divisions on the left than the right. So it was thought that the left side was the side that you should check your blood pressure on. So if you are checking your blood pressure at home, you want to make sure and check the same arm each time so that you're getting an accurate reading. You're comparing apples to apples, in other words. Because it wouldn't make any sense to check your arm on the left one time and then your right side, and then another time you check it on the left wrist, and then another time you check it on the right wrist, and then you're going to check the blood pressure on your ankles. You're going to get wildly different numbers, and thus you're not going to show any consistency of the testing. These days, though, now, they say that at least once you should check your blood pressure on both sides. The reason why is you could have a narrowing of an artery on one side versus the other. So if there's a drastic difference between the numbers, over 10 millimeters of mercury from side to side, then of course get it checked out. But for most people, the left side and the right side are roughly the same, within 5 millimeters of mercury. Thus, if you're going to check your blood pressure, check it on the same arm each time. And traditionally, we pick the left because of the reasons I mentioned. Now, if for some reason you had breast cancer or you've had an injury to the arm, there's surgery on the arm, then you can check it on the right, but always check it on the right. The sixth big mistake in checking your own blood pressure is checking it after a long usage of NSAIDs or right after you've consumed something with caffeine. This actually happened to me. I had an orthopedic problem. I tend to, and I had to have some surgery, and I didn't want to take the strong drugs that they gave me, so I just took some NSAIDs for a couple days to, deal with the pain, because the pain was pretty bad. But the NSAIDs helped. I took a name brand. What ended up happening was I did the follow-up in the doctor's office, and wouldn't you know it, my blood pressure was a lot higher than it should have been. And it's interesting because you just have to Google this. NSAIDs raise your blood pressure because of the damage to the kidneys. Caffeine is another one. So if you drink a cup of coffee or drink a lot of green tea that has caffeine in it, and then a half hour later you check your blood pressure, you're going to be getting numbers that just don't make sense. Always check your blood pressure prior to consuming products like that. Number 7 is cuff size and position of the cuff. Now, I have a machine here, and I'm going to show you something that this cuff has something where it says if this thing goes past here, you must select a larger cuff size. You know, not everybody is built the same way. Not everybody has the same size arms. Why are we using the same cuff for every single person? Now, if the cuff is too small for your arm, then it's going to read artificially high. If the cuff is too big for your arm, it's going to read artificially too low. So if you're going to order one and make sure that it fits your arm properly. And this particular one here has a line that says when you should use a larger or smaller cuff size. The second thing about buying a cuff is notice what it says here. It has an arrow and it says this is where the artery is supposed to be. So when you put this on your arm, if you don't know already, but the artery goes right in between your bicep here and your tricep. It goes right in here, and that's where you want the arrow to be. The artery will then come around like this so that you can listen for it on the antecubital space right here inside of your elbow. But you want to make sure that the cuff is positioned correctly on your arm, because there's a sensor, and if the sensor is over on the backside on your tricep, it's not going to read accurately. Now, when you put these on, you want to make sure and roll up your sleeve, make sure it's loose. It shouldn't be constricting your arm. And when you put this on, there should be about a ½ inch in between the cuff and the crease of your elbow. How tight should you put it? You should be able to take 2 fingers and place them in here before the machine starts going on. If you tighten it too tight to where now I can't get 2 fingers in there, this is going to read artificially high. Likewise, if it's too loose where I can get my entire hand in there, then it's going to read artificially low. The big problem is most people tighten this way too tight, and thus it causes pain. Pain stimulates your sympathetic nervous system. You get that fight or flight syndrome, and boom, your blood pressure goes up. Now, as a side note for cuff size, a lot of people get pain when they check their blood pressure because they're doing errors. They're making mistakes. If you knew how to check your own blood pressure properly using the methods that I showed you, then you're probably not going to get a lot of pain. But for some reason, some people just get a lot of pain when the arm is being squeezed, especially with automatic blood pressure machines. So there is an option. It's not the best option, but you can also use some type of wrist blood pressure monitor. Now, remember what I said, that the closer to the heart, the more accurate it is. There's a reason we don't check blood pressure at the ankle. Now, sometimes people do. That is a method, but it's not as accurate as if you can get closer to the heart. So these will work. They do ballpark it for you. So for an accurate measurement, you want to use the best tool that you can. And that brings us to the last and 8th mistake that people make, is not having a quality product. It's very simple. Most products are very, very good. There's a lot of different ones out there. Omron makes numerous different types of blood pressure machines. If you at least search for that brand, you can see different products. Some are more expensive than others. I'm going to put a link down below in the description of a high quality one that is not super expensive, so it's affordable. What do the expensive ones do? Most of them have a memory. Most of them keep track of statistics and can do averages. That's fine, but I think that if you just use a pen and paper and just check your blood pressure and write it down on a piece of paper, that's really all you need. That's the bare bones. But sometimes people will use a machine that's too old. Some people will use a machine where the blood pressure cuff has been worn away. These things do wear out. If your blood pressure cuff is 15 years old and you're getting erratic readings, it'd probably be a good idea to buy a new machine, because like I said in the beginning, to watch a brother-in-law have a stroke, end up in a wheelchair, end up in a nursing home, at a very young age, by the way, and die is a very difficult thing to see. And if you can know your blood pressure numbers and get accurate numbers, you can avoid a lot of health problems in the future. And these are just common mistakes that I see people make by themselves, and they get wrong numbers. So make sure you're doing it correctly, and make sure your doctor does it correctly as well. If you have specific questions in regard to blood pressure, your own health and wellness, we actually do Zoom appointments as well as telephone appointments. We do these Zoom and telephone appointments from all around the world. So you're more than welcome to call our office, schedule an actual Zoom or a telephone consultation with me. And what we're gonna do is we are going to section off a piece of our day just to speak to you and answer all your questions. So if you're interested in that, there's a link down below. You can get to my website and then just contact us. Now there is a fee for a Zoom or telephone consultation, so it's not free, but I can promise you this, you're gonna get your money's worth.